Let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. First, let's start off with what this presentation is about and why we asked you to join us. Essentially, we wanted to give you all an update on what services we're currently able to provide, answer questions about capacity for services, and then to let you all know kind of what's changed and what resources we've found that have been working to provide remote services and to accommodate our services during COVID. I'm going to give you all a little background about our company to get started, just because I know not everyone on the call is familiar with Work Opportunities. So I'll give you some information about who we are, what we do, how we provide services, and then we'll have opportunity to answer questions throughout. So we will go ahead and get started. Okay, so Work Opportunities, we are a privately owned organization, and we are in 7 different states. We originally started in 1982 in New Hampshire, and now we provide services in 7 different states, as I mentioned. We are headquartered in Dover, New Hampshire, and we have here listed our regional partners throughout Massachusetts, since all of you that are joining are from Massachusetts. So the referral sources that we partner with are UAll, Department of Children and Families, DDF, DPA, MRC. We're able to provide MCB services. We also partner with some school districts throughout the state, and that could be either through privately paid services that they want us to provide for their students, or through the PREETS program, if you're familiar with it. Some of the high school students you're working with might have access to that program, but those are the different services we provide in schools. So for DCF, what we're providing is called support and stabilization services, as you call them. And so we can get a little bit into who we are as an organization. This slide here talks about our mission statement, which is we create new opportunities for success in the workplace every day. And, at Work Opportunities, we do truly believe that all people can work. We work with individuals with all types of barriers, sorry, I talk with my hand, so I hit the button. All types of barriers, all types of disabilities. We're able to work with individuals who live in remote locations. So if you ever, find yourself working with an individual and you want to talk to either me or someone else within your region throughout the company, we're always willing to talk about how we can help someone overcome their barriers. And here we have listed our core values. We believe all people can work. It's our responsibility to change the world of work. We believe in individual initiative and dignity. We're pioneering and creative organization, which has really, really helped in recent times. We build successful and reciprocal relationships, and we're never satisfied. So that last one is a really hard core value to live, but if you've worked with us and we've worked with one of your clients, you probably know that we try a lot of different ways, and we're hoping to meet a client where they're at and provide the services they need. All right, so we can move on. Let me stop to see if anyone has any questions about us as an organization before I move on to talking more about DCF specific. It doesn't look like it. Okay. So for the population that we serve through our SNS program is primarily youth, and we also support adults. So it's typically, we call it our youth program, but we found throughout the years of providing the services that a lot of times it's the adults in the family that needs the support with employment or mentorship. So we do provide services from anyone starting at ages 14 and 65 plus. So, anyone that's in need of our services, we're able to help. Anyone with educational or behavioral challenges, we're willing to work with. One of the things that we typically do when working with a youth is we want to check in with their school and see how they're doing. If they're not able to handle school, we want to be able to support them with that while they're looking for a job. So providing that additional layer of support with communication with the school, or helping the student manage time if that's what they need help with. Anyone with substance abuse, we're able to help identify resources in the community, or just encourage them to follow through with their substance abuse plan. Transitioning out of different services. As I mentioned, all the service lines, we work with throughout the state. So we're able to provide a continuum of service if someone has links to other services like DDS or MRC. If someone has an unstable home environment, again, we want to help them find resources in the community to help solve that issue while they're looking for work. Court involvement, transitioning back into the community from placement, or anyone, with any type of a disability, that's our specialty. So we can certainly talk about any barriers, as I mentioned before. We're willing to work with all genders. As I mentioned, ages are 14 to 65. Typically, with a 14-year-old, we're generally looking for some sort of work assessment or volunteer placement. It can be really difficult. We have gotten students as young as 14 and 10 months positions with working papers. So if there's a specific case you want to talk about, that employment is the goal, we're willing to talk about it. But typically 14 to 15 are volunteer placements. We're completely community-based. If you've worked with us in the past, we have small offices within the community we work in. Those offices are typically for private meetings with clients, a quiet place for team members to get paperwork done. But all of our services have traditionally taken place in the community, which means a local library, a Starbucks, a park, a group home, in a common room or something like that. And so we really try to meet the clients in the community where the jobs are, to use that as a part of our training. Obviously now we're providing more remote services, which I can tell you a little bit about in just a moment. The average length of our program is 3 months. So as we're talking about the services we provide, keeping that in mind, what is realistic within that window of time of 3 months, we're always willing to extend services if it makes sense for the client. But typically the goals that we work on, we'd like to achieve within 3 months. All right. So in terms of outcomes that we're looking for when you refer an individual to us, we're looking for the youth or the adult to participate in the career planning process. So that means we're going to assist them with developing a resume. We're going to assist them with learning how to look online for positions, make follow-up calls, anything that they're able to do independently. We really want to foster those skills, and we want them to come away with the basic skills of knowing what they want to do for work and knowing how to look for a job in the future if they find themselves in that position again. We want to help them develop short and long-term academic and vocational goals, understanding that the jobs that we're applying for today might be a small step in a larger goal. So that's something that we definitely want to help each of the clients with. We want to help them, again, learn how to fill out effective job applications, complete a resume, participate in mock and actual interviews. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the career planning process in detail and kind of some of the resources we have available to help the youth and adults that we work with determine what they want to actually do as a job goal. If that's something they're struggling with, we do have some resources to help them explore what careers they might be interested in. We're going to help them fill out job development questionnaires to learn how to job develop. So essentially, what do you want to do and how do we approach employers to market your skills? We're going to help them obtain a job, and it's, for 16 and above, we want that to be a paid position. For 16 and below, depending on the individual, it's negotiable, but typically it's a work assessment or a volunteer opportunity. And a big one for youth is we want to help them establish a positive adult relationship and appropriate communication skills. So we're looking for that natural support in their lives right from the beginning, whether it's someone at school or someone at work, another adult that we can be that adult in their life, but we're also looking for someone long-term to model that appropriate communication and positive adult relationships. So those are typically the outcomes that we're looking for. Obviously, there's a lot of nuance within each of these goals, depending on where the person is, what their priorities are. But these are typically the things we're looking for when someone comes into our program to achieve. So let's pause there for a second. Are there any questions so far about our organization or the purpose of our program? All right, sounds good. Let's move on. Okay. So we've broken up our program into stages. So, you and the individuals you support know what to expect. When someone first comes into our program, you can send us an email. Typically, we ask for, any pertinent information you have about the client. You share that with us. There is a menu of service that you can fill out. I'll show you that later in the presentation. If you're really trying to target what services the individual wants, it really gives us a better idea of what to focus on when meeting with them, but we'll get to that in just a second. So initially we'll do an intake. Our intake is done within our portal, which is an online system. So the client and the guardian, if they're a minor, are going to be asked to sign releases remotely or virtually rather. They're going to get an email to sign releases. So that's the first step in the process is our intake. We're going to do a vocational profile, meaning what are you looking for? What are your interests? What do you hate doing? What do you love to do? Where do you work? How far can you travel? So all of those things, we want to figure out that foundation right in the beginning and be realistic about it. We're going to review hot job leads, meaning positions that our company has already found and vetted. So within our portal, we have a way that we can identify job leads in the community, and they'll be available when the individual comes into our program. We'll be able to show them hot job leads, meaning job leads that we've again vetted. We know how much they pay. We know what the expectations are. So if the individual decides to apply to one of those positions within our organization that we already have listed, we have a relationship with the manager. We are able to go outside of the positions we already have vetted, but it's a starting place. So we'll already have a list of employers and a list of positions that we can look through and see if any of them match the needs of the person. If not, we move on and we job develop, and we can call on literally any employer that makes sense for us to contact. Career planning, that's when the individual is, they're provided an opportunity to create a career plan, meaning identifying what their long-term and short-term goals are, who are the people in their lives that can support them with those goals, some of the limitations that might be there, and how are we going to overcome those limitations. So it's really a planning process of what are your goals beyond these 3 months, and how can we facilitate a way for you to get there even when you're out of our program. So we're trying to set up the foundation early on and really figuring out what do you want to get out of this. So that's our career planning. Identifying career goals goes right into that. It's really, what are the long-term goals? So you want to be a pilot? Okay, well, let's back up a little bit. What can we do to, discover whether that's the right career path for you, and what baby steps can we take to get there? Virtual Job Shadow is, I'm not sure if many of you have heard of it, but it's a platform that we started using before COVID, but pretty heavily after COVID. And you can look it up online, but it's essentially a platform that allows individuals to explore different careers. There are I never get the word right. There are proprietary videos that we can watch with individuals about all different careers. So it can show you the ins and outs of what the position looks like. You can do some research on what education you might need to actually be successful in that career. You can attend webinars facilitated by experts in that field. So there's a lot of stuff within it. It allows us to assign content to clients. So there's a lot of ways that we can utilize the system. And the really great thing about it is its remote platform. So a lot of the career planning and exploration and all of that, this platform allows us to do much of that remotely. If the individual, in a lot of cases, might need to obtain appropriate identification, we can help facilitate that so that they can accept the job when it's offered. And as I mentioned before, there's the interview training, which consists of mock interviews with our team members. In some cases, we ask an employer in the community to conduct a mock interview if we think it's appropriate, where the person should leave our program with a resume and an understanding on how to update their resume in the future. They should receive that resume electronically. If you're working with that individual and you want a copy of that for your records as well, you can always request that from us. We're going to train the individual on filling out applications online, filling out applications in person, whatever the most appropriate platform is for the jobs they're searching for. And then the last thing is securing clothing for interviews if that's something the individual needs. We try to assess during the mock interviews whether the individual has access to appropriate clothing, and if not, that's something that we'll work on to identify a resource in the person's community. All right, so that's our pre-vocational, and next we would go on to the job development phase. So once they've developed a job goal, we would begin the job development process. We're going to work with the individual to fill out questionnaires. Again, that's really figuring out what their job goal is. It's not just what jobs does Woo have available this week. It's what is your interest? What are you going to be good at? And even if it's not your forever job, let's find you an environment where you can thrive and where you can hopefully connect with the manager or another adult. And then we want to obtain a job. That's the ultimate goal. And we will send you a placement notification at that point. They will continue to maintain responsibilities to both their employer and the program, and they're going to work towards achieving their customized outcomes. So what that means is after the individual obtains employment, we're going to work with them on retaining employment by checking in with their employer, creating a retention plan which outlines the expectations of the employer and how the individual is doing relative to those expectations. So if we need to intervene at any point, we can. But at the same time, we're still working on those customized goals, whether that was to obtain a GED or to go on campus and take a tour, whatever those goals are, we're still working on those goals concurrently. One of the things I want to mention, because we said that we're going to send you a placement notification, I also wanted to mention, I'm not sure if I put it in the presentation later on, but while I'm thinking of it, I'll mention that we will send you all weekly updates once a client has an intake. So essentially, you're going to receive an update weekly that identifies the progress that the individual has made, if we're having any trouble getting in touch with them, and that comes to you in a Word document form, and it's a running narrative of how the client's doing week by week. So you'll have all of that in one place. So at any point, you'll know what progress or lack of progress the person is making. Stage 3 is on the job support and training. Again, identifying that positive role model, whether, we say adult role model for youth, but also identifying someone who can be a natural support for an adult. So that might mean in some instances, we have an individual who doesn't have reliable transportation. So is there someone on site that can help with that, a colleague that can help with that? So really just identifying what the person's needs are and then who can be a good role model or a good support. Okay, so this is where we put it. We're going to make weekly weekly contact with the employer to review the plan progress and update their retention plan. So every week we're going to be in touch with the employer, whether that's on site or whether that's just a phone call, really is determined on the place of employment and the individual's needs. So we can be there on site, really modeling behaviors, helping the individual understand how to complete a task, or we can be really hands-off. It's different every time we place a client. And step 4, so that would be what I mentioned earlier. Once you obtain a job and we're working with the employer, we can still work on those community integrated supports. So what were your other goals aside from employment? Education exploration, admission support, financial management. Some examples of financial management are things like helping someone open their first bank account so that their checks can get direct deposited, helping someone find resources to create a budget. There are all sorts of things that we're able to do within financial management, but just assisting someone with the resources needed to be financially stable once they have a job. Housing resources, this really differs from community to community, but really what it is being aware of the resources available in the community that you work in. and figuring out what might be most appropriate for the individual. So whether it's getting on a housing list, searching for apartments, or calling local charities to secure furniture for a new home, seeing if there are wait lists at local shelters, things like that. So if someone is having housing insecurities, it would be, again, community by community, and us really figuring out what the most recent resources are that are available. And organization and time management, we all need this, and really it's helping the individual understand that they're going to be held accountable to meeting us on time, just as they will be when they are employed. And so it's setting the tone right up front that we are helping you learn how to manage your time through keeping appointments with us, through us communicating with your school if that's necessary, and encouraging and assisting you in getting assignments in on time. So things like that. Just time management is really just built into the entire program, and how we want to model those behaviors throughout. And then finally, transportation training. This is another one that is community by community based on the resources available. So a couple things I'll say about transportation training are, in some communities, what it means is assisting the individual get a bus pass, and then showing them where the stop is and following them in our car, and helping them get to the next location, and helping them figure out how to reload their Charlie card or whatever it is that they're using. Transportation training can also look like assisting an individual with saving money to use Uber to get to and from, or setting up an Uber account, or networking with colleagues to see if anyone's coming from. All of this is obviously very complicated with COVID, but we have been able to figure out transportation options. When Ride and things like that in certain communities weren't running, we were able to just assist a client with figuring out what their individual options were and how to navigate the options that they had. So while things have gotten a lot more complicated, and when Will jumps on to tell us about a couple of clients, he can also give us a little bit of information on how we're assisting clients with overcoming the transportation barrier, because I think we all know that that's one of the major barriers, especially now. And there are some of you that might work in some more remote places where public transportation or all of the things I'm mentioning are not options for your clients. And one thing I will say, COVID has not made transportation any less complicated, but the availability for our remote services have allowed us to access a lot more clients and get them engaged in services. And so again, the transportation piece is separate and something we'd have to figure out individually, but we are finding that some of those more remote areas where people don't have access to transportation, we're able to access the individual more easily with the remote services. So that's been an interesting silver lining, I suppose. Okay, so I'm actually going to back up and stop here and ask if anyone has any questions, because the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to hand it over to Will for a while, and he's going to talk to you about a couple of success stories. I asked him to include a success story that was pre-COVID and a success story that was post-COVID. So 2 examples of how our services traditionally work, and then, how we've been able to accommodate what's going on. And after that, we'll get into the menu of service and all of that. So let's pause before we listen to the success stories and see if anyone has any questions. Looks like Yadira has a question, so I'm going to unmute you, Yadira. Hi, Yadira, can you hear me?
Yes, I could hear you.
Okay, great. Did you have a question?
Yes, I was wondering about immigrant students that are in DCF custody, but we don't have for example, they really want to work, but we don't have documentation because they're here illegally, or they have expired visas and the legal process takes so long. Is there a way that we can get them to work or get them some sort of experience? Because this seems amazing.
So in my experience, getting paid employment without documentation is not possible, because we have worked with some individuals through other referral sources, and then later found out that they didn't have documentation, and it just really halts the process, but I don't know relative to like a volunteer opportunity or something like that, whether that would be possible. So I think what we would need to do is talk about the individual, the community they live in, like what's around them, because the community matters. And I think we could definitely talk offline on about individuals, but typically it has been my experience that if someone doesn't have documentation, paid employment is off the table.
Okay.
Okay. Did I answer your question, Yadira?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. All right. Any other questions before we move on? All right. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute Will. Find Will. Hey, Will.
Hello.
All right. So I'm going to go to the next slide, and I think I think I deleted part of your slide, so I can pull up the. Do you have it there, or do you want me to pull up the other copy that I didn't delete it on?
No, I'm good. I'm familiar enough with the story, so
I must
no
have
worries.
deleted it accidentally. Okay, so tell us a little bit about
Okay.
Jason.
Yeah, so I wanted to bounce back real quick to Jadira's question, because the students that or the youth that you're talking about, they can certainly access parts of our program and benefit from the career counseling, and many other parts of our program while we discuss and figure out if we could find them volunteer work as well. So I just wanted to share that we could do some work with them that they would benefit from the program. It may not be obtaining a position paid somewhere, but they could still experience that. So
yeah, that's
so
a good point,
Tiffany
Will. And I think. Oh, sorry. I was saying, Yadira, I think I answered your question very black and white. But yeah, everything else that I'm mentioning and that Will's mentioning is available to any clients, whether they're documented or not. So that's a really good point, Will. Thank you.
Sure. And as Tiffany mentioned, so I'm the director for work opportunities in Merrimack Valley and Lowell. Jason was someone we worked with during COVID. So I actually worked directly with Jason, and he was a client that he was an adult father, and there was some history of domestic violence in question in the home. So he was currently out of the home, had supervised visits. There was lots of gaps in his employment history, and a lot of that was because he had kind of left the New England area for a short time and was down south and then came back. So there were some barriers on that side of it. He really had a strong desire to be a good role model for his children. He also did not have his driver's license, so there were limited transportation options. And what we were able to do with Jason, and we worked remotely, and it was great. He had access to a phone. We set him up with Zoom and made sure he knew how to use that, and that worked really well. We redid an entire new resume that would capture a lot of his skills rather than the gaps in his employment history. Worked on some interview skill building. We really looked at the local area to where he was living, and we found a few places within walking distance or within the bus route that he could access. And he had a strong history in the kitchen as a line cook and chef. So we really kind of played off those strengths of his. And within probably only a month and a half, he obtained a full-time position at a local sub shop as one of the line cooks. And this was, a huge success story because, first of all, it doesn't always happen that quickly in our services, someone being placed that quickly and successfully. And we were actually able to end services successfully early because he had everything he needed. It was less than a mile from where he was staying, so he could walk there. The company that hired him really enjoyed him, and things were going very successfully. So we were able to pass that on. As far as we know, he's still doing really well there and enjoying the success and benefits of having a full-time position again, and being able to, be that positive role model for his children.
And Will, was Jason's service wrapped up within the 3 months, or is that a service that we had to extend? How much time was he
Yes,
in our program to achieve those outcomes?
yeah, that was probably this was a unique case, and why I wanted to share the success of it, because it's probably ended at actually 2 months. Um, they decided to close early because we had just achieved all the goals that he was looking to achieve and was able to move on.
Okay, well, that's great. It doesn't always happen that fast, but it's nice to hear.
Right.
I will move on to your next success story, which, okay, so I see what happened. Something went wrong with the slideshow, so it looks like it duplicated. So there you are,
Perfect.
Charlie.
All right, awesome. So Charlie was another youth that came through our program just a couple months probably prior to COVID. Charlie had a lot of emotional challenges, super high anxiety. Because of that anxiety, there was drug use involved, and so right off the bat, she disclosed that she, was using drugs, and it was to help her sleep at night. So we knew to avoid, you know, there were different jobs that do drug testing. So we started to look at ways to go around that. We looked at her support system. We worked with DCF and seeing who she's meeting with for a therapist, if she's cooperating and, receiving that treatment. No interview skills, lack of self-esteem, some criminal activity in the background, and really inconsistent. And that's a part of our program that we really stress, that if someone is a flight risk or youth are running away, we typically have them sign an agreement that we will check in with them periodically, just as another person, another service provider, to have that consistency to check in with them throughout the week. And in Charlie's case, that was really successful, because towards the end, the outcomes, she started being much more consistent in probably the last month of services. So we worked on resume development, job development, interview training. Her self-confidence completely turned around once we started doing the resume development, and she could see what skills she had. She had very low self-esteem when we started, and seeing that the different skills and the strengths that she had, it was almost like a, confidence booster, that she could see, like, wow, I really can do this. And then she secured a part-time job at a collections office, which was also great because she was over the phone with people. And so that kind of helped reduce the anxiety with working face to face with customers. She had a consistent schedule, which was huge. The drug use had stopped as well. And I think the consistent schedule was so impactful because there was some routine to her life again. She was youth who had finished school early and wasn't really attending school at that point. So again, this was just a great success story of someone who had a lot of barriers and had achieved employment in a way that they hadn't thought was possible.
Great, thank you, Will. And so both of these individuals obviously are in Will's region, but we again provide services in all the different regions of Massachusetts. So if you're curious about what's going on in your region or some recent success stories, I'm going to share all of the names and contact information with you all at the end of this for the different WU regions, and you can either write down the email address for the person in your area and ask for some success stories if you want to hear about some specifics in your region. And I'm also recording this so we can send it out after. So thank you, Will.
My pleasure.
All right. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about the menu of service, which is a work opportunities form that we ask you to fill out when you send us a referral. So when you send us a referral, essentially you're just going to send us your internal referral document, whatever you have on file for the individual, and that can be sent through email. And we also ask that you complete our menu of service. So we ask that you complete it either with the individual over the phone or just based on what you know about the individual. If you don't know the individual well enough to fill out the menu of service or what their needs are, that's just fine. We will do it with them. But a lot of times we just want to agree on what the outcomes we're looking for are in the beginning. It's an electronic format, so I can email this out to anyone who needs a copy. Main 3 objectives of service in 90-day referral is what you want to focus on. So what are the top 3 outcomes that you're looking for that individual? When I show you the menu of service, I'll tell you sometimes I see like people will check off every single service, like, yep, this individual needs all of this. And so we might come back and say, okay, that sounds really great. We'd love for that person to achieve it, but what are the most important? Because realistically, we only have 90 days. Unless we're planning on extending it at that point. All right, so let me go ahead and show you the actual menu of service. So you would receive this electronically. It would have a cover sheet that I didn't include, which you would just fill out with your name, the individual's name, any information you want to give us. And then you're essentially, in the copy that I would send you, you'd be able to click the different things that you're looking for, the different outcomes you're looking for. So for career exploration, again, we're going to help anyone identify career goals. So that's when you can check off. We're assuming most people, if they're looking for employment, are going to automatically receive these services. So if that's something, if paid employment is something you're looking for, then all of these can be checked because that's something that we'll do automatically. So then we're looking for what kind of job placement are you looking for? A paid work assessment, they are available for youth that are 14 to 15. So I don't know if I mentioned the paid work assessment before. That's a short-term experience. The time varies depending on the employer, but basically it's a short-term experience where the individual goes in and does some work with an employer for a few shifts to kind of get a feel for what it's like to work, what it's like to show up for a shift, what it's like to get feedback. And throughout that time, they can be compensated through work opportunities for that experience, if that's something that we're looking for. We can also do volunteer positions if we're looking for more of a long-term experience for stability for the person. So those are 2 options for our 14 and 15-year-old referrals. For paid job placement, and just to clarify, all of our paid job placements are minimum wage and above, and the individuals that we place all work directly for the employers. I know there are some organizations who do it a little bit differently, but anyone that we place would be paid minimum wage or above. Volunteer placement, which is what I just mentioned, and that could be for any age. So, you might have an adult in your program that really just needs to stay busy because there's a history of addiction, but employment isn't realistic right now. We can talk about volunteer work for anyone in the program. It doesn't have to be a 14 or 15-year-old. And then if you know that an individual you're working with has a CORI, let us know up front, even if you don't know exactly what's on it. We prefer to know exactly what's on it, but as much information as you can give us is going to benefit us because, as Will said, we can basically redirect our focus and focus on employers who don't do CORI checks or who don't do drug tests. But having that information up front is really helpful. And then finally, the community integrated supports. So the most popular options that people choose for us to help out with are educational exploration, which we talked about a little before, housing resources. For educational exploration, when I mentioned Virtual Job Shadow earlier, that platform, that's also a really great resource for education exploration. So if someone wants to figure out what school they might want to attend or what options are available, we can do that remotely as well. We also have set up tours and financial aid meetings for youth who are interested in enrolling in college. So those are all things we can help with. Transportation training and organization and time management are 2 things I've already reviewed. So again, if you're referring someone, just assume that if they're looking for paid employment, all of these things will be completed with the individual. You're going to choose one of these boxes, but it's this last category that you really want to, focus. determine what you want us to focus on, because it would be really difficult to do all of these things in 3 months. Any additional explanation that you want to give us? So what do you mean when you say housing resources? Can you get a little bit more specific? There's also, when I said these are the most popular, that's because there's so much more that a client might need and so much more that we can provide. So the bottom line is that if you have an individual that you think we can help, whether they have an employment goal or not, we can certainly talk about it. There's also budgeting and financial literacy, family training, job and college tours. So sometimes the main thing is getting someone a job and making sure they go to therapy. So reminding them on Monday that they have therapy on Wednesday. So that's something that's not on this list for you to choose from, but 100% ask us if we can do it. And, we'll have a conversation on what services we can provide and what's kind of out of our wheelhouse. And then anything else you want us to know about the client, which typically is included in the referral, so you don't have to be redundant, but you can use that space if you need it. Okay, so while I have this slide up, I'll pause for a second. Are there any questions about the referral process, how you would get us a referral? Again, in the next couple of slides, I'm going to share contact information by region, so you'll have that information, but does anyone have any questions about the process or how you would get us a referral? If so, you can just click the raise hand button and I can unmute you. All right, it doesn't look like it. So let's talk a little bit just about our outcomes. I think the 2 success stories Will shared are really powerful and speaks to 2 individuals within our services, but just some general numbers. So last year, fiscal year 20, which for us goes from July to June, we secured 1,085 paid job placements company-wide. So that includes all of our services. But the Massachusetts WU team secured 416 paid placements, and they completed 65 work assessments, and we established 25 volunteer placements. One of the things I mentioned earlier within our job development process was our hot job leads and our job board. I mentioned those 2 terms. So I like to explain this for someone that's never seen it. I call it our internal Indeed, meaning it's a place that we can go online and look through who's hiring, but it's all jobs that our career resource specialists or our business development team have reached out to. So one thing that helps us stand apart from other organizations is our remote business development team. So this is a group of individuals who have always worked remotely, even pre-COVID. So they work for multiple areas, but basically their role is to identify job leads in those areas relative to the needs of our clients. So essentially they know, okay, Lowell has X amount of clients, here are all of their job goals. So their position entails calling those employers, figuring out what the needs are, what opportunities are there, how much it pays. So really establishing that there is a job and we know who's hiring. So now we have a relationship with that employer. And that whole service is available to any of your clients beyond the CRS, the career resource specialist that works directly with them. So essentially they have an entirely other team, because it might seem unrealistic. How can WU take care of all of these goals in 3 months? But the reality is we have an entire other team assisting and supporting our career resource specialists, which helps us move a lot faster. So if you want to know more about that, I can certainly tell you more offline, but those are the basics of how we business develop and how we are so successful. I am looking at the time right now, and it's 1:50, and I was planning on, if I had time, showing you all the portal at the end of this presentation. I'm not sure if we're going to have time, but again, our advanced portal system is essentially where we keep all of our client files, so any personal or pertinent information, any documents that we create with a client remain in our portal system on file. So if you call me a year from now and say you need someone's resume that I worked with a year ago, I can look it up for you. Everything we need is within this portal system, which allows us to work in the community because everything is always been electronic for us. And it has allowed us to easily transition to remote services as well, which has been another silver lining for us. We do have those interagency linkages that I mentioned early on with DCF offices, public school districts, DDS, MRC, DYS, and MCB. So all of those organizations, if you have an individual who, for example, when they age out of high school, they're going to be going to DDS services, or you have an individual who has a documented disability, and when they graduate, they're going to go into MRC services. Any of those things, we can help facilitate the next service, and we can also be that service provider. So it's good to have that continuum of service if someone's doing well within our program. So that's available. And a lot of times when I talk to individuals at DCF, one of the things they're interested in hearing is about our expertise in working with individuals with disabilities. That's really the foundation of who Work Opportunities is. We've always worked with individuals with disabilities. And so if you have individuals on your caseload that have documented disabilities, we can really be, an expert in helping you to facilitate job placement with those individuals. And then, as I said before, you're going to get those weekly updates. It's going to come in an email, usually by the end of the week on Friday or on Monday. You'll get a narrative of how the individual is doing, anything that came up during that week. And we're also going to give you a complete list of all of the employers that the person has applied to. So you'll be seeing what progress we make. We offer a 6-week check-in in the middle of service. We're always available to do that check-in with the individual and you all to just figure out if there's anything on that menu that maybe isn't relevant anymore that we want to switch up. So that's usually a good time to check in. I'm going to pause and take a breath, and I think we have a question. No, I was mistaken. No question. Okay. All right, so now we're to the end of my and Will's presentation. I'm going to pause here for a second just to tell you the names of the individuals in your area. I can email this out, the recording. I have everyone who attended this session's email address. So what I can do is once I have the recording downloaded, I can email it out to you. But if you're looking or if you have an urgent need and you want to reach out to someone for our services, you can, in Boston, Rebecca Mayer is the director. As we said, Lowell and Merrimack Valley, which is going to be Lawrence Havel and the Lowell office, Will Ellis. Worcester and Framingham, Robert Bonavie, and his cell and email address is right there. If you're in the Blackstone Valley area, Michael Amons. North Shore is Elena. And then in our Taunton area is going to be Lori. I'll pause for anyone scribbling down their numbers. And then finally, we have Braintree, which is going to be Bill Mullen. And then we have Springfield, which is going to be Scott. And if you haven't had an opportunity to check out our website, you can certainly go on there and read some more success stories and read a little bit more about our organization. And I think that's all I had to share with you all today. Here's some other places you can get in touch with us or read more about us. I'm going to pause right here for a quick second and see if anyone has questions. And since we have 5 more minutes, if anyone is interested in seeing our portal, I did want to show it to you and the job board I was speaking about earlier. So if you're interested, sit tight. I'll get us on there. And if you're not interested or you got a slide, feel free to do that too. So just bear with me 1 second and I will get online. Okay, so this is our, I'll give you a quick tour. This is our portal where, again, everything is stored from client information, internal company trainings, job leads, our documentation for the services we provide. So if you need information on a client, we can come right into our portal and look up that information. Our intake manager is in here. So I'll basically stick to the basics and show you what our job board looks like. And because Will is with us from Lowell, I will use his area as an example. Okay. So basically what you see are all of these filters here. And so an individual within our company can help a client search for jobs based on these filters. So I just put in Lowell, Mass, and I'm seeing all of these positions. So all of these positions listed, as you can see, we have contacts, we have companies, we have locations. If I click on it, I'm going to get even more information about the position. It's being really slow for some reason. Okay. So if I want more information to review, so for example, I'm going through this with an individual and they say that dietary aid position sounds really great. What are the details? I can come in here and I can tell them what the details are, how they apply, what the pay is. And then the individual that reached out to the company will write some notes on the specifics. So they have to be able to lift 30 to 50 pounds. And any of these positions, as I mentioned earlier, our company has been in touch with the contact. So if the individual you referred to us decides they want to apply for that position, they'll apply, and someone from our organization who has the relationship will call that manager directly and say, really excited to tell you I have a candidate. And the manager, hopefully at that point considers our candidate. So this is what our job board is. It's a really, really great resource. The last thing I'll show you about our job board is our job order map. This is basically the same information that you just saw, except it's mapped out for people that prefer. I think I might have clicked on the wrong thing. Hold on one sec. Oh, I'm sorry, this isn't working for me right now. But either way, when I click on that, typically what would happen is I'd see a map similar to a Google map, and all of these positions would be plotted on a map. So it's really just the same information, but it's allowing a visual aid for individuals to see how far a distance a position is from their home. And sometimes that way helps an individual realize that they can actually access that position when they didn't previously think they could. So yeah, that's our job board. This is our portal. Like I said, I'm not going to get into too many details, but it's a really great resource. And just know that if you send us individual clients, we will have job leads available for them on day one. So I'm going to pause here again. We're at 1:59. I want to thank you all for joining. I'm going to send the recording out to everyone on the email list, and feel free to share it throughout your office. Feel free to share it also if you think with any families that, I know this was geared towards you all as the referral source, but if you think this information would be helpful for families, you certainly can share it with them as well. So I will look to see if there are any questions, and if anyone wants to chat about specifics, I can hang on, and if not, you're all free to go, and have a great afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us.